Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to Total War Warhammer. So we're talking again about individual units, and we're starting again from sort of the bottom, and we're moving our way up. But we're talking about the Brettonians' lowest tier infantry a little bit more in depth here, the Spearmen-at-arms with shields. Now this is a very particular unit in the way that you use it and the way that it functions. Spearmen-at-arms with shields don't have very much killing power. Their melee attack is 24, which is pretty okay, but not great. Its weapon strength is 26 with no armor penetration, really. Armor piercing damage being 6 is not great. And all around, they're not going to really plow through the front line of anyone in particular, not even if they're similarly using cheap infantry. What they have got going for them is extremely good defensive statistics. 30 armor is pretty okay, but you're looking at 38 melee defense on a 300-point unit, and this is actually the best melee defense out of all the 300-point units in the game. So these guys have very, very good defensive statistics. Combine that synergistically with the Lord attribute for the Brettonians here. We can look over here at the Blessing of the Lady. That gives you plus 12% damage resistance. So you can get that from both Lone Lane Corps, or you can get that with the Lord. Unfortunately, I don't believe you get that from their hero, so that's something that is missing there. So for a very small section of the battlefield, if supported by the general, the Spearmen-at-arms with shields can last through a lot of beating. They still don't have that killing power to break enemy units or punch through that, but they can win through sheer bloody attrition, were it not for the fact that their leadership is so poor. If we look at the Spearmen-at-arms, it's got the 48, which is 12 points lower than the Empire's equivalent. So what do these guys typically do? Well, they're very, very strong at holding an enemy at bay for a short period of time while your support elements clean up the rest of the enemy and then get those rear charges. In fact, if your opponent is committed to sort of just tying these guys down with very, very cheap infantry themselves, they can win against those. For example, if they're fighting Empire Spearmen, they will beat the Empire Spearmen most of the time just because of their superior statistics. However, if anything starts to go wrong, even in the slightest, the Spearmen-at-arms with shields collapse immediately, whereas those Empire units would stand their ground and fight for much longer. So there's sort of that trade-off there. So basically, these guys are a hold the line sort of thing while you clean up the support elements of the army and then rear charge the main line for the infantry. Or if the enemy has committed very, very heavily into infantry, simply holding the line long enough for those support elements on your army to smash into his backline and crush the fight decisively. So Brettonia is one of those combined arms factions that really needs both elements to work properly. But again, if they bring nothing but really cheap infantry, these guys can hold their own against that. They have got slightly tilted statistics that make them a little bit stronger. So I think that the Spearmen-at-arms, because of their statistics and because of the way that they're built, usually you don't want to build an army revolving around them entirely. You're going to lack offense if your opponent takes more elite troops. You will lose no matter how many of these Spearmen-at-arms you've got, because it's simply pushing through. You won't be causing enough casualties to those elite troops as they sort of slowly chew through your Spearmen-at-arms that they'll eventually grind you down and win, and then your leadership is going to break at that sort of critical point. The other point to make sure that you understand is that that low leadership means that if you've got nothing but Spearmen-at-arms with shields, if something happens and that maneuverability gets in your way and you end up getting surrounded by your opponent, their morale is going to break very, very, very quickly. So these guys, I think, as they're written, are designed entirely for holding a line, protecting your support elements, and giving you the time that you need to do a decisive strike elsewhere. We can compare and contrast this to the Empire Spearmen. If we look at the Empire Spearmen, we can see that it's got a little bit more of a dedicated stat line. It's just weaker all around, but much better at holding out against things. I think that the Empire Spearmen is much better designed for holding out a backline, because unlike the Brettonians, you don't need to actually frontline with these guys. The Brettonians kind of do, since their two options are the Spearmen-at-arms and the Men-at-arms polearms. Obviously, you'd use the Men-at-arms polearms against dwarves or something like that, but against something like, say, another Empire player, you're probably going to want Spearmen-at-arms as your frontline troop. And this also gives a reasoning for their charge defense against all. If you look at the Brettonian Spearmen-at-arms, they've got charge defense against everything, including infantry, meaning that as a front wave infantry force, they can stand there and take a charge from enemy infantry and hold the line where the Empire comparable wouldn't. So I think that the Empire one is just much more devoted to staying around the backline and protecting against cavalry, because they can fill the frontline niche with other units like the Swordsmen or other such similar units, because the Swordsman unit is a much better frontline unit. And if we were to compare it to the goblins, the green skin goblins can be used as a comparable frontliner. They've got much more offense-leaning statistics, were it not for the fact that they've got that silver shield, which means that they're better at absorbing missile shots than the Brettonians. So there is that consideration. We could compare that to the dwarves. The miners, again, are being that fringe sort of thing that they are, being somewhat tanky while having very poor statistics all around. Vampire counts, we can compare them to the skeletons. Skeletons have got somewhat comparable statistics, but much lower melee defense, lower armor, meaning that these guys are filling the same role of like holding up the enemy and delaying them. But the skeleton warriors are just going to be physically there. They're not going to be able to defeat other comparable units, whereas the Brettonian spearmen, just a little bit more offense oriented. And as a payment for that, the skeleton warriors will last until they're dead. The Brettonians will run at the first sign of trouble, so they get used in slightly different contexts there. And the Marauder is another comparison, and the Marauder is actually fairly comparable in performance there. So very different role, 100 points more, but it's ultimately in performance, I would say that the Marauder is like the offense version of the Brettonian Spearmen-at-arms. So these guys do compare fairly well when held up against a lot of the other troops out there. You just have to make sure that that leadership is being protected at all times, and that they're not going to get too surrounded by the opponent. The other thing that you have to keep in mind, unlike, say, the orcs, if you were to use a lot of goblins, you could use the goblins as part of a large wave of infantry. It wouldn't surprise me to see something like, Azag the Slaughterer or something like that, and then like 4 or 5 units of goblins, and then a bunch of savage orcs, and then a couple of big uns. This sort of thing you could actually conceivably see for the orcs and goblins, but you could not see the equivalent coming from the Spearmen-at-arms and halberds from the Brettonians. You need to sort of use these guys only for holding, and then you need to sort of win the fight by combined arms. So let's go take a look at an example of this over here. Now, in this particular case, a lot of the damage is going to be coming out from the archers, and the archers are actually a very high quality unit for the Brettonians, but they really do require that protection from your spear line so that they can take the time to do that damage. If they don't have the time to do that damage, then they're not really going to be able to do much. You can also look at Low and Lane Core as being a major supporting element. Him coming around behind and getting rear charges against units that are held up by spears is really going to swing the battles in favor of those spears. So in this case, we've got ourselves up against the Empire here, and they've got, strictly speaking, a stronger melee line than I do. They've got 5 units of spears, just like I've got 6 units of spears. They've got 3 units of halberds. I've got 4 units of halberds. The thing is, they've got the 2 units of greatswords, which does tilt this quite a bit in his favor. He's got 2 units of demi-griff knights with halberds. Keep in mind, these are also spearmen shields, so he's also paying more for the spearmen. He's also got Carl Friends, and he's got 2 units of crossbowmen and an Empire captain. So his infantry section that you can look at over here is significantly more powerful than my own. What have I got in my favor? Well, I've got slightly more and more diverse supporting elements. I've got a much stronger general, and I've got a little bit of magic that can definitely use some damage. I've got a little bit more invested into missile units of a unit that I think is a little bit more economical. So the 3 peasant bowmen is going to be better than the 2 crossbowmen units by quite a bit in terms of shooting. The problem is that if anything goes wrong, my units will run away, his won't. So we're going to see an interesting little seam in the terrain here, but that's probably just because I've got the graphics settings so low. Oh yeah, you can see it's almost like a football field. Weird, I didn't see this when I was playing this. Either way, so let's go ahead and fast forward, because I do spend quite a bit of time getting positioned and all that other stuff. And you're going to see a pretty rare thing here. This is actually going to start off with a proper skirmish phase, where both of us are trying to take pot shots at each other with our missiles, instead of just rushing headlong with our infantry. Now, my opponent is outgunned in terms of the number of ranged units that he has, so he should actually be rushing me, but it doesn't really make a huge difference here. So we've got our spear line set up so that they'll be able to support our archers if he rushes forward, and they'll be able to start getting kills. But we're just getting into the skirmishing game. We're just firing away with our missiles. We're getting our mage in here so that she can start dealing a little bit of damage with magic. And yeah, this is something that you used to see a lot in Shogun and Shogun 2, where both sides would take a lot of missiles and sort of start off with trying to whittle down opponents' numbers with those missiles. And yeah, we can see some damage coming down from the magic. It's not a great scatter. It was actually a pretty poor one, but it's doing okay damage. It's following along with these poor swordsmen. But, yeah, nothing that great. Lore of Heavens is such crap. But in any event, yeah, we're just going to see how things go. Now, he's taking some damage, pretty bad damage, in fact, on one of his units of Spearmen shields, and that means that we're not going to be getting a clean comparison fight. That's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for, in context, how these units perform in real battles when you're playing against other people. And what you typically are going to see is, if you can soften up enemies with your units, you will soften those units up with those units. You won't just charge headlong right away. We're also seeing that we're getting a bit of a gang rush on the opponent's general here. This is going to really diminish their ability to fight later on. Getting another charge into those crossbowmen over there. Just want to get them out of the skirmishing fights so that we can focus on taking out other units here, and that is indeed what we're sort of doing. And this is why you don't take an air general against Brettonia. It's just a bad idea. But yeah, we're just holding back with our Spearmen-at-arms. There's no reason for us to be on the offensive here. Our peasant bowmen are dealing damage. Our Pegasus Knights and our general are dealing damage. Those units are capable of doing this without me having to hold up my opponent's front lines. So why hold up his front lines? I might as well just continue on as I am. And that is indeed what's going on. Now, unfortunately, I'm not really paying much attention, and my shots are going off into this Empire Captain, which is really atrocious. But at this point in time, my opponent does charge in with these Demigryph Knights into my Knights of the Realm. I should have actually moved them back further into my formation so I could have supported with the infantry a little bit faster. But I'm running my infantry in here, and I'm running my Damsel over to try and throw down some support magic, but he retreats just as I'm about to cast a spell there, and I have to sort of call off the attack before I lightning bolt myself too much there, but it's just a bit of an unfortunate thing there. Still, we've managed to sort of protect our cavalry and our backline a little bit, although you can see that our Knights of the Realm got pretty trashed up by that. Demigryph Knights are just like so much of an overmatch against one unit of Knights of the Realm that it's just not even comparable. But over here, Peasant Bowmen starting to retreat. We've got Knights of the Realm coming back into the fight against them with the Spearmen-at-arms, and our general is going to also get into this fight. And this is what they're good at. This is what these Spearmen... They don't get a very good engage here, so they don't properly do it, but they're pretty good at this. They're good at getting into the fight and bogging down units so that more important units can get into the fight. And here comes Lone Lane Corps to get into this fight and deal some damage here. The Knights of the Realm are going to sort of rush in. These guys are being blocked in a little bit because they think they're engaged back here against this one unit of this one Demigryph Knight halberd. So they're not running forward like they should be. So that's what ends up going wrong for me. You can see like these three guys are just blocking these two knights completely. It's really trash. But yeah, while we're tying them down with our general, with our Knights of the Realm, and with these spearmen, we're able to start firing at them with those peasant bowmen again, and actually deals quite a lot of damage to them as they approach. At this point in time, we are actually going to start engaging, though, with our Spearmen-at-arms lines, just because I've overextended with this unit quite badly, which I think was worth it, because it let us deal a lot of damage to those Demigryph Knights, and we do want to get rid of those Demigryph Knights. But you're going to see this one unit of Spearmen-at-arms with shields engaging two units of Spearmen, and despite the damage they've taken, they're actually still pretty healthy in terms of the numbers of units that are still attacking. So while we will be causing some good kills in this fight, we will slowly lose this. It takes a long time, because that high defense means that this unit is doing a really good job of holding down the line here. We're bringing more units across and around so that I can either rear charge these units or I can tie up these units depending on what my opponent does. We're also bringing the halberds across that side as well, but I probably should have left one over here because I do need something to stop these Demigryph Knights with halberds as they come in. We got actually them, I'm not really 100% sure what they were doing. I saw them canceling their charge, and I actually canceled my Lone Lane Corps charge because they sort of like walked into my peasant bowman. I think they might have had a charge order against the damsel. Here comes another lightning bolt. It's not a great targeting one, but actually, yeah, it actually wasn't that bad. So at this point in time, you know, he comes in against those men-at-arms, and my men-at-arms spearmen are just holding down the line. That's all they're doing, really. They're over here, they're holding up against great swords, which they're going to lose definitely against. Halberds over here, sort of rushing into this fight over here, but over here, they're going to be holding down these Empire spearmen, and that's all really, and this Empire halberdier now. They're not taking very many casualties from me, but I'm also not taking very many casualties from them, and you can see that I'm still protecting my peasant bowmen quite effectively here, even though my lines are sort of crumbling all over the place. This unit finally breaks, but it was holding down 2 people in the back line, and they were getting shot at quite a bit from those peasant bowmen. Here, Demigryph Knights with halberds coming back into the fight a little bit. It's a little bit unfortunate, but is the way of things sometimes, and they've routed again. So, why is this different from other factions? Well, realistically, other factions would have lost against these greatswords much faster than I'm losing here. And that really is important. I've got Lowen Leoncourt, who's been able to get into the fight now. He's coming into the rear of the greatswords and dealing a lot of damage to them. Taking some shots as well from these crossbowmen, but that's not too important. And you can see that because Lowen Leoncourt, the terror has allowed me to break through these guys. Comet of Cassandora came down there, and I hate Comet of Cassandora, but like Lore of Heavens is such a crap lore that I had nothing else to cast really, so it's not ideal. Over here, Knights of the Realm sort of coming in and out of the fight. We've still got lots of shots from those bowmen. This unit of bowmen, unfortunately, has gotten tied up in melee combat and is going to be in trouble, but that's just how it is sometimes. But yeah, we've managed to clean up here, and a major part of how we've done that is because these units have held out so well against those greatswords. Now we can bring our units in to start clearing out the back line here, and just bring your big decisive units in wherever you can, as often as you can, and win as many different fights as you can that way. And your Brettonian peasants, because they can hold out in the fight so long, because the Spearmen-at-arms can delay the enemy for so long, will actually win you fights this way. Because, like, if I was using the Empire's one as my line here against something a little bit against this sort of rush, I would have lost there against those greatswords if I was playing a mirror match here. Those greatswords would have crushed me like way too quickly. So let's go into the battle results screen here. Our Spearmen-at-arms got fairly middling numbers of kills, but again, they were facing off against superior infantry, and they normally would be dying a lot faster, especially against things like greatswords. These greatswords got 58 and 41 kills in a matchup where you would typically want to be seeing like 100 kills plus on each unit, or at least 70 kills plus on each unit. 58 is pretty good though, so we won't really deny that. The reason that this happened was because they weren't getting through the defensive statistics of the men-at-arms all that easily, and that gave me lots of time to get in with King Lowen Leoncourt as my main hammer unit. That's really what I was using him for, since I had to use the Knights of the Realm to sort of deflect or block the Demigryph Knights. Because we were doing things that way, King Lowen Leoncourt became my only real support hammer unit. We also see over 150 kills collectively from the Peasant Bowmen. This is a huge number of kills for a ranged unit in this game. And their ability to sort of stand there and fire, taking up mostly halberdiers, spearmen with shields, and so on and so forth, and deal a lot of damage as well to the Demigryph Knights. All of that combined gave them a huge number of kills. That's because they were protected by a large number of Spearmen-at-arms with shields that were able to hold out for a very long time. Again, if I was playing as the Empire with just the regular Spearmen without shields, those great swords would have broken through much faster. Those halberdiers would have probably done okay. The Spearmen with shields would have probably broken through a little bit faster. There's just multiple things that would have been different if I was playing the equivalent army of this as the Empire. Obviously, I wouldn't have Pegasus Knights either, so that's a different thing. But yeah, the Spearmen-at-arms are just a very solid defensive unit. I think that they're one of the ones that I think is the best value for that purpose in the game. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I've got to say about that unit. I hope you found this video enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.